Good morning, team. It is Tuesday, April 13th. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Amy Corr, and I'm joined by Kevin Van Eck, and we're live out of the Goose Island office. We've got a great topic for you today, so grab your mug and let's jump into the latest episode of Coffee with Amy and Kevin.
Yes, good morning, Amy. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Make sure you have your coffee. So, we know what's happening in the market around us, right? In many markets, there's this lack of inventory. And in fact, NAR at the end of February stated that inventory is down 30% over last year. That's significant, and we're all feeling it. Now, we know each market is local. Each market is independent. Look up your own market stats. But odds are, if you're representing a buyer or a seller in this market today, you've encountered a multiple offer situation. So today, we're starting with part one of winning multiple offers.
That's right, Kevin. And the first thing that I want to talk about are market conditions. This is something that is so important for you to have a great conversation with your buyer about. And the thing that is key is that you don't want to have a conversation about market conditions once they find the property that they've fallen in love with, right? Because then at that point, it's too late. Their emotions have kicked in, and it's a lot harder to have a really good conversation where you can set the expectations about the market that they're going to have to try and buy a property in. So what you want to do is similar to what we tell sellers, or similar to when we have you preparing for a listing presentation with sellers. Pull the information from InfoSparks. There's four main things on InfoSparks that I like to use whenever I'm talking to a buyer or a seller. The first is I'd love to pull month supply of inventory. This is critical because in this market, you can actually look at the month supply of inventory and be able to explain to your buyer what those numbers mean. Obviously, if we're looking at 1, 2, or even 3 months supply of inventory, which we're seeing in a lot of these markets, it means that there is not enough supply for the amount of buyers out there. But if you take them through this conversation and help them understand before they even see houses, it's already going to set their mind into knowing that it's going to be a competitive market. The other thing that you want to take a look at is market time. It's going to be able to show them that homes are going on the market and then are going under contract very quickly. That also is going to help set the expectation that they're probably going to need to move fast if there's a home that they end up finding that they want to make an offer on. And then you can pull homes for sale, which will show them how many homes are currently on the market for sale. And what we're probably seeing in a lot of these markets is that the homes for sale are down, meaning that we've got less inventory. And again, that helps them understand the story that if there's less homes for sale, that means it's going to be a more competitive market for them. And then same for closed sales. You can actually show closed sale history that allows them to see that things are closing and moving very quickly. It might also show that if closed sales are down, it could be because, again, there isn't as much inventory as we've seen in years past. So use the data to educate your buyers. The other thing is speed does not always create success. And what I mean by this is oftentimes we meet a buyer and we know the market's hot. They want to get into the market and they want to find something to purchase. So the next thing that we do is we get them in our car on that next Saturday and off to the races we go. What would be more important is for you to actually take the time to sit down with them, really talk about the market and the market conditions before you get them in the car and before you show them properties. And the reason why this is so important is you want this to be a non-emotional conversation. So if you're talking to them about the hypotheticals of what may happen when you start looking for properties, it's going to be easier for them to start understanding what they're going to have to do in order to obtain a home. And there's going to be no emotion tied to it because they haven't found the house that they're in love with yet. So you should do your legwork up front. You should have at least a 1-hour consult with your buyer before you get them in the car and talk them through the market conditions. The other thing is you want to talk to them about their needs versus their wants. What do they have to have versus what would be great if this house also included X, Y, or Z, right? Because as buyers start looking at properties, again, the lines get blurred and sometimes what they need gets misplaced for what they want. And the more that you know about this up front, you can help to keep them on track once you start seeing homes. And you want to make sure that you walk through the process of what it will actually be like to put an offer in on a house, so they know what to expect in regards to earnest money, but more importantly, what they may need to expect in a multiple offer scenario. You can explain to them what an escalation clause is all about. You can talk about what their comfort level would be on where their cap would be and how much they can really spend. You can also talk to them about if they end up losing out and are not the first in position for a property, that there is an option to put in a fully executed backup offer. Again, explaining the landscape of this market to your buyers right now is going to educate them. It's going to allow them to ask any questions and relay any concerns to you before they find the property that they fall in love with. And I guarantee you, both you and your buyer are going to be better educated and better armed to be way more competitive when you do find the property that they want to put an offer in on.
That's so important. Preparation. I want to carry that over, Amy, because that's such an important step in meeting with your buyer and talking through the market, talking through how you're going to handle situations ahead of time. And this almost sounds like a no-brainer. Let's talk about our client financials. Our buyers' financials need to be in line, because remember, when we submit an offer, when we get into a bidding war or multiple offer situation, the seller has choices. And so what we want to make sure is that we have positioned our clients in such a way to create confidence in our buyer's ability to take a transaction from contract to close. So this sounds like a no-brainer, but I'm still hearing about it where we're writing offers without a pre-approval, where we're out looking at properties without a pre-approval, where we're not prepared. And we know that we have to be prepared. As Amy was just talking about, the market's moving fast. If we don't have our clients' pre-approval in place, they're going to miss out on something. They're going to miss out on an opportunity. And when there is a listing agent and they have 5 offers, are we able to say to them, if you could just wait a couple of days, the lender will have the pre-approval ready in just a little bit? No, the seller will not wait. So let's make sure from the very baseline, we have that pre-approval. I know it sounds so basic, but we're not all doing it 100%. So let's make sure we've got that taken care of. But also when we talk about financials and we talk about preparing, one of the things that we can talk through is the ability to write an offer without an appraisal or mortgage contingency. Now, if you're listening to me and you're this is intriguing to you, please pay attention very closely. In the 7.0 contract, you have the ability to write what is effectively a cash offer with the ability to get a mortgage. In the car contract, this clause is not included. Oftentimes what we do when we want to waive an appraisal contingency and waive the mortgage contingency with that, remember they're one and the same, is that we just cross it out on the car contract. But the 7.0 goes further. The 7.0 makes it more clear and more transparent for the seller. Now, the reason why I'm saying let's pay attention as I'm talking here for just a minute about this clause is that last week I talked with 2 agents, one on the list side, one on the buy side, entering into a contract together where this clause was used, and neither one of them knew what it meant. So let's make sure when we're writing contracts and we're entering into agreements with our clients and writing offers on properties that we understand what we're writing. So let's talk about this clause. It's very powerful. This clause in the 7.0 says that the buyer is effectively writing a cash offer. There's no mortgage contingency. There's no appraisal contingency. They're writing a cash offer, but they're telling the seller that they might still get a mortgage. So what this means is the buyer, they may still get a mortgage, they may still get an appraisal, but they don't have a mortgage contingency to back out. Now, on the seller side, that means this offer is strong. That means that the buyer will have to close whether they can get a mortgage or not. But when we're representing a buyer and using this clause, we have to be very cautious with our buyers. We have to explain to them that if they can't get a mortgage, they are still expected to close. So they need to have the cash on hand to be able to do so. I like this clause because it's more transparent than just crossing out the mortgage contingency in the car offer. I like it because it's open dialogue between both parties. They understand how strong the offer is because it's cash, but understand also that they might be getting a mortgage. But the buyers have to know that if they don't get a mortgage, they have to close on the property and pay cash for it. All right, the last thing, and this is also very simple, bookending something a little complicated with 2 easy things. We started first with the pre-approval. We're going to end with earnest money. Now, earnest money is a lever you can pull. Remember, earnest money is a good faith deposit, letting the seller know that the buyer is seriously interested in the property. What it's not is adding to the bottom line for either party. Increasing your earnest money does not increase the net for the seller. It does not decrease or increase what the buyer is paying. But what it does do is it's a good faith deposit. It's not the one and only thing, but it is a piece of the puzzle that could be impactful, letting the seller know that your buyer is serious. Now, there are risks with earnest money. Remember, in Illinois and other states, escrow has to be released by all parties. That means the buyer and the seller. So if something goes wrong, just understand that there may be some money hanging out there when your buyer puts it out into escrow. But if your buyer is serious and your buyer is ready to pursue a property, one of the levers you can pull to strengthen your offer and convey to the seller their financial security and strength is by increasing the earnest money.
Such really great points, Kevin, because, let's face it, this market is really competitive right now. And I know as agents or as brokers, we're trying really hard to figure out how to put our clients in the best position possible. And so the final thing that I want to touch on today is communication. And I know that Kevin and I have talked about this in earlier coffees, how to be a great buyer's broker, how to be a great listing broker. But again, I would say communication is one of the best tools that you can use to create a leg up or to begin to develop a great relationship with the listing broker. And what you need to figure out early on is, how best to communicate with this listing agent in order to create a relationship. And here's the other thing. You need to, yes, you are on the less desirable side of this transaction. They do have the upper hand. So you have to get comfortable with the fact that you may have to work a little bit harder on the communication side to make sure that you get in front of this listing agent. And you might also have to ask how they want to be communicated with and make sure that you're taking all of those steps to develop a relationship, but more importantly, to make it as easy as possible for this listing agent to do a deal with you, right? And so that starts with good communication, making sure that you're very clear. And to Kevin's points, if you are doing some interesting things throughout writing your contract, making sure that you really communicate those key points clearly with the listing agent. I would say that would include a live phone call, but then following up with an email to recap your conversation. Now, I know it takes a little more time, but the more crystal clear you can be when you're talking with a listing agent, the better off you're going to be in the long run. So make it really easy to communicate with you so that it makes it easy for them to then take what you're communicating and clearly convey it to their sellers. We've all been in situations where as agents, we go back and forth, and then somehow what the seller understands is different than what the buyer offered. And what ends up happening? Everyone gets frustrated. So the more that you can eliminate that, the better off you're going to be. And then here's the thing. Why don't you also think about taking some steps, maybe a little bit outside your comfort zone, but a way in which to develop a stronger connection or relationship with this broker. So maybe you have a great showing with them and you're going to be putting in an offer. Maybe instead of just texting them, maybe sending them a quick little video saying, hey, Kevin, thank you so much for showing us the property today. My clients absolutely loved it. We're really excited. I'm actually meeting with them shortly to write up an offer, and I'll be in contact if I have any questions, because I want to make sure that this is as easy for you and your sellers as can be, because my buyers would love to buy this home. Do something different. A video is a way to connect virtually with the listing agent, and it's something different than what most everybody else will do. Here's another thing that's really important to consider when you're working with a listing agent is making sure to ask them what's important to the seller. Kevin talked about different terms in the contract. And while most of the time we think price is the number one priority for most sellers, while that is certainly a component, there might be other things that you can put into the contract that are really important to the seller. So make sure that you ask the listing agent, because again, if you can create that dialogue and that communication, you're going to tee up an offer that is really easy for them to present to their seller. And then here's the other thing, once you've done a showing with them, or let's say that you end up throwing in an offer, check out their profile on social media. Maybe they've just recently won as one of the top brokers from the Chicago Association of Realtors or from NAR, and maybe just send a quick little congratulatory note and say, really excited for an opportunity to work with you. Now, I know it sounds kind of over the top, but let's face it, if they're putting that out there on Facebook, or there's things that you're seeing about them in their profile, and you can do something to congratulate them or develop a better relationship with them, why not give it a shot? When Kevin was sharing that insight with me, he had said that he'd heard of someone who had recently done it, and it ended up helping them win in a multiple offer situation. So we're not saying to be overly schmoozy, but find opportunities or ways to connect with the listing broker so that, again, you can give your buyer the best shot at obtaining that home. And we know it's competitive out there. So again, the relationship that you forge with the listing broker is key. So keep in mind, unfortunately, you do not have the upper hand. They do. So you got to just own it, deal with it, and figure out how to proceed accordingly so you can create success for your client.
I love that last point, Amy, because it's all about relationships, right? So whether it's relationships with us or our clients, also the relationships with other brokers that help us create success for our clients. So this was part one. We've covered 3 things. Stay tuned, because next week we're going to cover part 2. But in the meantime, there are resources available to you. The first is an Inman article that outlines all of these steps that we're talking through. It's a great article, a handbook on how to win bidding wars. The second resource you can use is the Ninja Accelerator. We've done numerous Ninja Accelerators over the last year, but there's specifically one that talks about how to win as a buyer's agent. We're going to post that. It's down below in the email. You can also see the link to the article. And next week, join us for How to Win Multiple Offers, part 2. Make it a great day, everybody.
Bye, team. Make it a great day. We'll see you next Tuesday.